So, I am very pleased to call this meeting to order on the regular board meeting Tuesday, October 26th. And I would first like to acknowledge that the Board of Education acknowledges we are on the traditional unceded territories of the Comox First Nation. We would like to thank them for the privilege of living on their land and the gift of working with their children. And we are indeed privileged here. So our first item, welcome to everybody, and first item is the adoption of the agenda. Can I have a motion to adopt? Trustee Howe, Trustee Waite, thank you. Anybody with additions? Great. All in favor? Thank you very much. And next item here, it looks like an interesting agenda too. The next item here are board meeting minutes. Can I have a motion? You have with you the September 28 minutes. I hope you had an opportunity to look them over, see if there were any errors or omissions that you want to draw attention to. Okay, motion to adopt, Trustee Hawk, second. Oh, wait a minute, Trustee Howe. Trustee Hawksby, thank you. Names come up. All in favor? Thank you so much. Okay, next item, unfinished business, our long-range facility plan. That is unfinished business, but we have it on the agenda as item 2D, so do you want to speak to anything now?
Yes, I just wanted to let trustees know that previously staff had thought to bring some options forward for the October board meeting, but we felt that further consultation with trustees was important, and so we're looking at having a committee of the whole meeting on November 15th with trustees, and then bringing some options forward for the November board meeting. So just to let trustees know that previously we had thought there would be items regarding the long-range facility plan for this agenda, but we're going to bring it forward to November, and this is due to unexpected enrollment pressures in other areas that needs a bit more of research and information from staff for trustees to make a decision on these items.
Okay, thank you. Record of in-camera meeting minutes from September 28th, 21, regular in-camera meeting, and we discussed, we adopted our June 22nd meetings. We had an update on legal matters, land and property matters, and another item. On October 12th, we received an information and an update on a legal matter, and so we're continuing. Board Chair's report. I just have a quick notice here. Thank you. Among the ongoing work for ST71, some of which we'll be learning about and discussing this evening, is the task of managing our operations to ensure that our school district continues to provide excellent educational opportunities to all our students online and in person in schools that are safe and healthy for all. We know that the possibility of a mandatory vaccination requirement for employees in the public sector is of great interest to many in our community. The Ministry of Education has released a framework to assist districts in looking at all facets of this complex issue, exploring options to increase safety for employees if merited, while minimizing the impacts of any measures on our operations. This requires collection of information, consultation with health professionals and our employee partners, and careful consideration before any decision. The board has begun this work, but as it has labor relations implications, it is a matter properly dealt with in camera. We will take the time to do this thoroughly with the support of our senior management team and with the best interests of our SD71 community as a whole in mind. Other areas of significant work in the education sector were on the agenda of an education partners meeting in Vancouver that brought together board representatives, superintendents, and secretary treasurers from school districts around the province. And I attended on behalf of SD 71, the first large in-person conference for many of us in several years. Bit of a culture shock. The focus was on major themes for school districts, which we will hear more about tonight and in future meetings. We are all working closely with the Ministry of Education to address accountability, engagement, truth and reconciliation, equity, and inclusion in the service of education success for all students. Presentations included assessment tools as a mechanism for supporting equity, an especially important element for ensuring that our efforts to improve outcomes for Indigenous students in particular are focused and successful. Equity in education, truth and reconciliation in BC public schools, and the framework for enhanced student learning, and the elements of the ministry's anti-racism action plan continued these themes. We also had a somewhat drier but no less important session on responsible management and accounting of district reserve funds. The board's strategic goals, measurable implementation plans, and monitoring of results are part of ensuring that the work we do is transparent and effective. Much of this work is done by our senior leaders and their teams, delivered at school sites by our staff focused on making a difference for every student. As trustees, it's our responsibility to be informed and responsive and support the work. We face many complex challenges with never enough resources, in our view, with determination to succeed together. And we have received 3 reports tonight to support this work, and we're looking for more from our staff. So thank you, everybody, for your attention. I don't know if you have any questions about the workshops I attend, but I think they will all be coming up, and we will be hearing more at our Trustee Academy meeting in December as well. So the next item here is presentations. We have none, but we have our education meeting committee meeting report. Trustee Waite.
Thank you. On October the 12th, we had our education committee meeting. We had 2 presentations. The first was on, one of them was on student mental health, and it was presented by our Director of Instruction, Sean Lamoureux, and the other presentation was on Pathways to Hope, and our guest speakers were Tori Schultz and Tori Schultz, who's the program developer, and Esther Schatz, our retired Director of Instruction. I move that the Board of Education receive the Education Committee Board Report as presented.
Second. Trustee Hawkesby, thank you. Any comments? Questions? No? All in favor? Thank you very much. I think that was an excellent presentation. We all learned a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And our next meeting is November the 9th, and the topic will be dual credit courses.
Very interesting. Good. All right. Strategic direction. Superintendent, you have some things to share
Sure.
with us.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to start with a brief highlight of some of the activities. It's interesting coming back this year where we're starting to see activities coming back and sporting events at our schools. And I'll just highlight a little one that's, well, I shouldn't say a little one. I think it's involved a number of people is the cross-country running that's been happening at our elementary schools. And I know our director, Dixon, has been racing out of here, no pun intended, to attend those cross-country meets, and is always comes back with a huge smile on his face, reporting all the wonderful events and seeing the kids compete. Valley View has reported they've had 3 this month across our district, as we've had prior to the pandemic that we're in, and it is so nice when you see our students with their school jerseys running for their school, the cheering that happens between schools, encouragement that's going on. Really knew what was missing, and you get that, and you get a sense of it, and things are going to be okay. We see our kids happy and active, and that's what counts. And so it's really nice to see that coming back. And thank you very much to all the coaches and parents who stand out in the rain and drive these kids around the valley to different sites, so that's been very nice to see. This past Tuesday, Lake Trail received recognition and a $500 reward for their ongoing work from the Networks of Inquiry and Indigenous Education. And the comment was made, we value, this is from the network to Lake Trail, we value the work you are doing to support learners, build greater Indigenous understanding in your community, and develop more responsive practices in your school. Your work is making a significant contribution to creating a culture of learning and respect, both in your school and across the province. You'll hear more how that ties into a district-wide project that's coming, but congratulations to the staff, students, and administration of Lake Trail. Another thing that September brings up in October is the Terry Fox Run. And looking at the numbers here, and it just never ceases to amaze me, Isfeld raised over $9,000 during their Terry Fox Run. Highland over $2,500, and it cost some teachers and a student their hair in the process. So it's always nice to see the participation and what they will do. And I do believe one of our principals donned a costume again. Is that correct, Mr. Manning? I think so. Principal Kobe, who usually has a wager with his students, and so again, just a sign of the good spirit and the dedication of our students to making a difference. Another one, Terry Fox Run, was held in Cumberland, over $1,700, and this is again participation. Mr. Colgrave, the vice principal, got pied in the face. So, but big bucks were raised, spirit all around. Another thing that occurred, and I was very fortunate to attend it at Royston, was the Wenjack Walk, Reconciliation Walk. And it was Cumberland had one, and again, it must have been the same time they proceeded through the rain and the storm, and leadership students were helpful marshals and put on many inspiring displays for classes to ponder as they made their way through the trails. And I know in Royston, teachers had set up little stations that represented the distance that Cheney was intending to walk, and milestones in each of the distances and a little story. And listening to the students engage in conversation of why it's important and what it would have been like for him to walk those distances in the pouring rain as we were standing there listening to him and really engaged. So it was really nice to see. This is just a small sampling of what's happening in our schools, and again, couldn't happen without the dedication of our staff and our parents who are there to support their students and the schools in all of these activities. So a huge thank you goes out to that community. A couple of things that I wanted to bring to your attention. Last year we had I'll start the strategic plan report, which looks similar to this. And this year, and I'm giving you trustees a hard copy, it is on our website, and you can see it. It's just been brought up, the strategic plan report, and in it, very laid out in the same format as last year, where we have our 4 strategic pillars, and under each pillar are all the things that our schools have done and we're working on around that particular goal. So again, when you spin, and I want you to think about this, all of this happened during a COVID time. So talk about disruption and how schools had to adjust and make things happen. But it's really good reading. I encourage people to go to our website and find out all the neat things their particular school encountered and did. The second report that you'll have is the district annual report, otherwise known as the Framework for Enhancing Student Learning. This report is a new report, and as we're aware, we have a framework for enhancing student learning, and it's tied into measuring what our strategic plan is, how are we doing in that regards, plus there are some measurables that they wanted to look at. And at the back of the report, probably on page, I'm going to walk us through page 12, you will see some snapshots of data over the past 4 years. In this particular case, it's FSA. And what staff have done is have gone through, looked at it, made some observations about the data, and then continued to share what are the next steps. What do we do with this now? You'll also see data around our 6-year completion rates. And one of the things that we were able to do for the report and for our community and for trustees is we were able to take the data and change and look at some different aspects of it. So we were able to look at our 6-year completion rate with and without NIDES. We were able to separate our Indigenous students, again, with and without. And for those wondering, why would we look at the data without NIDES? When a student begins with us, and I'll use NIDES Navigate in grade 8, they're counted towards they're considered our students. They may only be taking 2 or 3 courses. At the end of the 2 years, maybe in their grade 10 year, they decide, I'm going to go back to my school, which may be, because NIDES serves students all around the province, maybe 100 Mile House, maybe Prince George, who knows where they're from. They count, ironically, against the record that they haven't left. So it's, okay, that student didn't complete their graduation in 6 years. Now the ministry does do an adjustment for that. However, because of the size of the school, we found that it's not an accurate representation. So when we were able to look at the data without those numbers, you can see a representation of what that means. And we did the same thing around a grade-to-grade transition. What is our grade-to-grade transition? This was an interesting process to go through because we're now able to take this document and work with our school leaders and say, what does this really mean when we talk about grade-to-grade transition at our high schools? Why do we see discrepancies? What do you think are some of the indicators as to why our students between 10 and 11, let's say, the drop or the rate is lower? The other part, the last piece of data that we reported on is student learning survey, and that's the survey that is completed by our grade 4s and 7s, 10s and 12s, and dealing with, do you feel welcome at your school? Is school a place you feel like you belong? Do you feel safe? And how many adults at your school care about you? What we try to do is take a look at the cohort data. So when our students start in grade 4, if they were in grade 4 in 2016-17, they would be in grade 7 in 2018-19. Does it increase? Does it decrease? And we're able to ask ourselves questions. Why? What were some of the causes? And trace this through. It will be very interesting when we look at the data over the next few years, when we can use that data to see, did the and I'll call it a disruption in our process, in our learning, due to COVID, did that have an effect, one way or the other? So this is an annual report that will be required. It is on the website. It's posted there under reports, and people can look at it. It has many, many links attached to it. So with, for example, around the amount of work that the district has done with mental health, you will see a link to go into mental health resources, mental health kits, an update of some of the things the schools have done. And that's all there. It's good information. It's really nice to see. Again, I can't stress enough the good work that our staff have been involved in. The last piece of information I'd like to bring to your attention is a wonderful project that we will, as a district, be beginning November 19th, and that is an equity scan. It's called Equity in Action, and you do have a handout in front of you. Now, the Equity in Action, I'll give you a little bit of background. It was in response to the report of the Office of the Auditor General from 2015. Indigenous Education Branch and the Ministry of Education created an equity scanning tool to support school districts in identifying promising practices as well as barriers that are impacting Indigenous student achievement and success. School districts will work collaboratively with the ministry team, and during the process, Districts will scan, construct an equity profile, determine a theory of change, and develop an equity action plan in service to Indigenous learners, families, and communities. The lead that we will be working with is Joe Heslop from the ministry and his team, and they'll be joining us on the 19th of November for the first meeting. It's the introductory meeting, and invites will be coming out. Trustees, you'll be receiving those, and it'll be the first group is about 30 to 35 people. The IEC will be there, reps from across the district, and some of our community groups as well will be attending that, and we will be beginning this process and working through it. It's not a one and done. It is a lengthy process. It'll probably take us a couple of years, and I'm going to put Director Dixon on the spot right now because I do believe Director Dixon was involved in an equity scan in his previous home. And Director Dixon, maybe you can share a couple of the highlights that you found going through this process.
Thank you. It's a real engaging process that makes us take a look at our practices, any potential unaware biases we may have as well, and ways that we can support all of our learners and our Indigenous learners within our school district. It's a deep dive into our story and how we support our students and where we can go after. So it's a real engaging process. Districts from all around the province have been taking part for the past few years, and every district I've spoken to has talked real positive about the outcomes and some of the learning that all of our employee sectors will go through as we go through this scan.
So we're looking forward to the opportunity to begin this process, and would like to thank our district principal, Bruce Carlos, who's doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and he'll be one of the co-leads in that process. So that's some exciting work that's coming up.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
This chart at the beginning with the list of the district names.
Yeah.
What is?
Those are.
We don't seem to be on it.
No, because we're in the next group.
Ah.
Those are.
Oh, these are the districts
these are
that
the early
did
adopters,
this
and they
report.
just moved
All
through
right.
the process. And of course,
That's a lot of districts. Though.
There was a delay, as you can appreciate, last year with COVID that caused a bit of a delay where we weren't able to be accepted into the process at that point. So lots going on. We really look forward to diving into the equity scan and equity in action project. I'd just like to ask our assistant superintendent if you would share a little bit about another area.
Can we just wait 1 second, see if anybody
Oh, sure.
here has questions on your part, and I think Trustee Kate.
So I have a question. Going to the student learning survey, when I was looking at some of the percentages here, I'm wondering, I guess that kind of caught my eye and a bit concerning. When is school a place where you feel like you belong? And when I look at the grade 7, when 45% say that they feel like they belong, and when I read grade 10, 45, and grade 12, 50%, well, that's less than half our students feel like they belong in school. So when I looked at that, it was like, whoa, do we need to do something to support them? Like why would students feel like they don't belong in school? Because we want to think our schools as this caring, welcoming place for our students, but this scan is telling us something different.
Absolutely.
So that really kind of shocked me. And then the other one was how many adults in your school care about you. And it was really amazing. The grade 12s were 84% thought they had some really good caring, but when you look at the grade 10s, and it's down to 59%. So, well, like I said, that first one really, and I'm wondering what, as a district, we're going to do to address some of that. Is something part of a strategic plan? Because when I look at that, it does jump out at me as a problem.
Yeah, a lot of this is understanding the data first off, and going back, and our conversation will be with our leadership team, and having this exact conversation that we will be asking them to go back to the schools and with focus groups, trying to dig into that. What does that figure mean? We at the district level will be doing a comparative. When we look at this, how does this compare? you know, not that it matters, but where does it, are we finding a trend? Is it a trend over time? Is it, what exactly is it? And we challenge each other, and we challenge our schools to work with their school communities to understand it. And try to, what does this mean to them? When you look at how many adults, you're right, when you look at the end of their educational time, they're at 84. Okay, so 2 years earlier, those students were at 70 in grade 10. So they gained, 14% roughly. And I mean, it's, when you look at the cohorting. So over time, they felt that. So the question I would have is, how can we make a greater impact earlier on? And does that lead to structures? When schools would look at it and say, hey, do we have a common structure where students can connect with one student, with one teacher right away? Whether it be through an advisory group or a homeroom type structure, or whatever structure these schools use. This is some of the data that they would be looking at and using.
Thanks for bringing it up, Jim. I agree those numbers are a bit concerning, and the reason it's up in grade 12 as a percentage may be that many of the students who didn't feel like they were supported in grade 10 left. They may be the ones that are leaving. That might be one of the reasons, one of the problems we have. So one of the interesting comments at the presentations that I sat in with the assessment tools is that sometimes we may be doing things that we think are going to help children feel like they belong, but it's those children and their communities, their parents and other people in the community who can actually explain what would be things that, like what we think might make people feel like they belong may not be the things that would make a big difference to them. So it's a great tool, but it is something that we all would no doubt be concerned about. And yeah, it's a real indicator, and getting the numbers tells us where to start looking.
And again, the other side of this is looking at what is the participation rate on these.
Yeah.
And every year we make sure we push hard to get participation rate. And we struggle to get our parent community to be involved and complete this. And sometimes our schools struggle to get all their students, but it's something that we continually push. We try to increase our participation rate because the information is valuable for schools. And so this is a focus for us.
Yeah,
as
like,
a-
what does that mean? What
Yeah,
are the things?
absolutely.
Absolutely, good tool.
Yeah.
Trustee Wade.
I just want to circle back to the annual report, and
Yeah.
I'm going to reiterate what the superintendent said is, when I read the report, you wouldn't have known we were in COVID and cohorts and all of those kinds of things for all of the things that happen in all of the schools. Yeah, so fun.
It's nice.
Yeah.
All done? Yeah, okay. Any other questions at this point? We're good to go. Thanks very much, Trustee Kate.
Turn over to the Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you, Superintendent DeMeo. I just apologize for not having this on the agenda, but this just came to fruition at the very end of the week. Last week, we're really excited to be able to announce that we're going to be able to partake of the Inner Explorer program in every single one of our schools this coming school year. And for those trustees that don't know, Inner Explorer is a mindfulness program. We've been working with the Steve Fatter Foundation for the last 6 or 7 years, and we've had it at a few schools here and there, but this will be the first time that we've had every school participating. It is lessons on mindfulness that teachers can use in their classroom. They take some time and students listen to an audio clip on mindfulness. An elementary teacher might use this perhaps after recess to calm kids down and get them ready for learning. There are lessons set up pre-K, elementary, middle school, and high school, so it'll fit the broad range of all of our students. These mindfulness lessons are proven to increase academic ability, reduce anxiety, and build resilience. So we're really looking forward to this, and we think it'll be an integral part of our mental health strategic priority. So excited to be able to bring that to everybody.
Really valuable at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Any questions? do we get to try the thing
We
ourselves?
can make that
I think we could all
happen.
use a little anxiety reduction
Yeah.
ourselves these days.
We can maybe make that happen at an education committee meeting at some point this year.
That would be fun, yeah. Yes, okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and Secretary Treasurer, you have some interesting things for us, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. So just a continuation of the long-range facility discussion. We started the process last fall and worked through an update to the long-range facility plan and brought a completed plan to the board in the June board meeting. The intention at that time was to bring forward some options for discussion at the September board meeting, but we quickly realized that our enrollments were increasing beyond what we had projected for the ministry last February, and we felt that more time was needed in order to bring options forward to the board to really look at some long-term solutions that will hopefully address some of our capacity issues for the next 5 to 10 years. So, for example, on our enrollments, last year in our school-based enrollment, we had 7,255 students. This year, we have 7,850. So overall, we had an increase in school-based enrollments of 594 students. Now, we anticipated some of the bricks and mortar students would come back from our distance ed program as we reopened more normally from COVID. But we also saw an increase in our, we had predicted a decrease in our distance ed students of around 700, but now we've seen actually we only lost about 400 students. So we gained a net gain of 100 students in bricks and mortar beyond what we had predicted. And overall, we had predicted back last February a decrease of 200 students across the district, considering that some of the students in NIDES were going to go back to the original districts. But we've seen a net increase between NIDES and bricks and mortar of 355 students. So we're seeing some capacity issues throughout the district that we hadn't anticipated in some areas, and part of that is due to housing costs and availability of housing in certain areas of our valley. So just to let the trustees know that we had originally anticipated that we would bring some options forward for the board to consider in October, but now we're looking at gathering some more information, long-term projections from our software provider Baragar, and providing some more in-depth considerations for the board for a November committee of the whole meeting, and then hopefully the November board meeting. So just to let trustees know where the process is at.
Great, that's great. Yeah, I think there's some real challenges with being able to consider whether these are trends or not and what might happen, but we'll have a little more discussion in the facilities committee report. Do you have questions, Trustee Kate?
Just a question, and I know that part of the conversation that through the student leadership you were going to have, maybe yourself or Director Hasselgrave, was meeting with our municipal partners and talking about planned subdivisions and processes, and I'm wondering if that process happened and we got sort of a sense from either the City of Courtenay, Town of Comox, Area B, and all the other areas in Cumberland. What are they looking at for their projections and their applications and permits for housing, and especially the density part? When I look at up off Queenish, and I'm looking at density housing there, you go by quality foods and density. So a lot of the projects they seem to have are like townhouses, multi-family units rather than single. So I'm wondering if that conversation is happening. So part of our information is gathering that data and looking at where the major, I call it developments are, and the multi-purpose and multi-houses, and more of the ones that family affordable. So that would be my question on process on that.
Yeah, and that's why staff requested some additional time before we brought some options forward. So Director Hasselgrave is having conversations with the planning departments at the Town of Comox, the City of Courtenay, and the Village of Cumberland to try and get a sense of what developments are currently underway and what developments are planned, and then the types of developments. And then we're taking that information back to Beauregard that helps us assess what we think the student yields might be out of those types of housings. For example, you know, a townhouse type facility tends to have more children that, you know, per unit than some other types of housing. So we're looking at, for example, you know, a one bedroom or a studio apartment probably doesn't have a family living in it, but 2 or 3 bedroom apartments may, right? So we're gathering, and that's part of why we're requesting some additional time, is to gather the information from the various sources and then talk to our software provider and help try and get projections going forward. We saw 4% enrollment growth this year, which is amongst the highest in the province, and it's significant. And we feel as a staff that that's going to be ongoing, and we need to do some planning around how we're going to, you know, the good news is that our district is growing, but that also creates challenges when we're already at capacity in so many of our facilities. Even in our projections that we considered last year, we didn't anticipate this significant amount of growth, and the long-term impacts that COVID may have shifting from larger cities to more communities like ours. And so, you know, we're trying to gather that information and bring as much information as we can for trustees.
Thank you.
Well, it is a really interesting place to be as opposed to the cutback period where we were dealing with it, and it means resources for supporting students and funding for the counseling and the other types of activities. It's great, but now we find our boxes become a problem. So I don't know. We're breathless with all of this from spinning around. But I think, you know, we'll be waiting for, you know, fairly detailed and robust, some numbers for us to wrap our heads around, and I know that's a lot of crunching with a lot of unknowns, but I think you'll bring something interesting to us that we will do our homework on. Excellent. And do you have something else to say on Cumberland?
Yes, so just to let the board know that Director Hesselgrave and myself are continuing to meet with Cumberland staff, the Village of Cumberland staff, regarding the childcare facility that the Village of Cumberland received the grant for. So the district staff here have offered their support to the Village of Cumberland to help get the facility constructed and operational. So a proposal has been put forward to the Village of Cumberland Mayor and Council regarding the child care facility and how the district may be able to help with that. We don't yet have a response from the village, but they are looking at it, and I believe at their November meeting. So just to let trustees know that conversation is ongoing, and we're, as a district, offering our support for the village to help make the facility a reality. So, Director Hesselgrave, did you want to add anything on either of those topics?
No, you covered it well. Thank you.
Any questions from trustees? It's great. We're excited about this partnership work that you're doing, and important work. Yeah. Human resources. Trustee Waite, are you reporting on this?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And I just wanted, that weird noise was my phone. If I put it in my car, it behaves, but it's taken me a while to progress for my BlackBerry. And even though it's on silent, occasionally it makes these weird noises, and I know I'll get there. But it's a sharp learning curve to leave my BlackBerry to go to something else. So just letting everybody know what that weird noise was. So, so it's my pleasure to share with you all our retirements tonight, 3 retirements. Susan Harrison, Education Assistant, Inclusive Education, will retire effective December 31st after 9 years of service with our district. Margaret Freeney, Library Clerk, Quinish Elementary, will retire effective December 31st after 36 years of service with our district. and Andrea Cochran, teacher with Brooklyn Elementary, will retire effective December 31st after 33 years of service with our district. That's a combined level of service of 78 years, and it looks like there's going to be a lot of celebrating near the end of December for many families in our community, and I want to thank Susan, Margaret, and Andrea for all of their work that they've done with our students and the work they've done with our schools and our community. So thank you.
Thanks very much. I think we may have, with the kind of growth we're seeing, we may have to put a halt to any retirements. It's also a nice time where, for a while, we were having to lay off so many of our new teachers and couldn't promise them jobs for the next year. Very, very difficult time for our young and up-and-coming teachers, and it's nice to have that changed as well. So our board standing committees, always interesting work being done by our committees, and we have, first of all, the Finance Committee Board Report, and Trustee Frawley, who is the chair of this report, of this committee, normally sent her regrets. She's ill, but Trustee Caton, I believe that you are going to be reporting on this.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I said Trustee Frawley is chair, and she's following the health advisor, and you've got that sniffles and the cold. You stay home, and that's what she's doing. She's keeping us safe by following the health protocols, and we do miss her tonight, but hope she gets better. So you see before you the Finance Committee Board Report, and I'm not going to read it all. I'm pretty sure everyone's read it. The work, the committee is we review our draft terms of reference, the annual work plan. We also talked about the financial statements with a verbal update, projected enrollment revenue, which our Secretary Treasurer just alluded to, that we're up in numbers. It has an impact on our financial statements with the financial update. So I will turn it over to our Secretary Treasurer to add anything on there, or maybe Director Hilton, if she wants to add any information on some of the numbers out there. They are better to explain the numbers than I am. And I wonder if they want to add anything to our financial statements before I make the motion to accept the report.
Thank you, Trustee Caton. So, yes, I mean, somebody mentioned earlier that sometimes the numbers aren't too much fun, but for Candace and I, we just love it. So we hope we don't, everyone else glaze over when we talk finance. So one of the things that was on this month's agenda was the draft terms of reference. Normally we review that and approve it, but we realized that the current draft terms of reference aren't in alignment with current board bylaw and committee structures. So we wanted to take a look at the terms of reference, and we'll bring it forward at the November or December committees to update that terms of reference. Then we looked at the annual work plan, all the exciting work that's ahead of us for this year in regards to finance. So the next big milestone for the finance would be the updated amended annual budget, which will reflect our additional revenue and expenses for the increased enrollment and other district initiatives. So that's one of the main things that's coming forward on the annual work plan. And then on the financial statements, we do have the new finance committee or finance accountability policies from the Ministry of Education, so we will be making sure we fully implement those in our finance structures and following the direction from the Ministry of Education. So as I mentioned earlier in the long-range facility plan, there is significant enrollment growth, which is a great news story for the district. And then we looked at our capital projects and received an update on the capital projects that are underway. So Director Hinton, did you want to add anything?
No, that was great. Thank
sorry.
you.
I think I said Hinton, I meant Hilton. So I apologize. You caught me with the candy in my mouth, so
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
This is
Nothing
okay.
to add, Brenda. I thought that
Okay.
was great. Happy to answer any questions.
I was happy to attend that meeting as an alternate. The chair sometimes does, and I thought that the information presented and your meticulous attention is always appreciated, so. Are there any other questions from trustees?
questions.
We have a motion from.
I'll move the motion that the
Mhm.
Board of Education receive the Finance Committee report as presented.
Second, Trustee Howe. All in favor? Thank you all very much. Great. Next, we have the Policy Committee. Trustee Waite, are you carrying
Thank you.
that one?
All right, so if we want to turn to page 32 of our agenda package.
Mm-hmm.
So our committee met on October 21st, and we discussed a couple of items. The first one was something from a motion that happened September 1st, 2020 at our board meeting. And it was regarding reviewing changes to a policy 7.4.15, regarding the voting requirements for extending the length of a board meeting. So the committee reviewed this over several meetings, and our committee had good discussion. We looked at all sorts of other boards and their timelines and their processes, and we've come up with a recommendation that we would like to bring forward to the board. And the motion or the recommendation is that all meetings shall stand adjourned at 7 p.m. or 2 hours after their commencement, whichever comes first. Meetings may extend to 9:30 p.m. or an additional 30 minutes by a majority vote of those present in favor of the extension. Meetings may continue past 9:30 p.m. or the 30-minute extension, provided that all members present at the meeting unanimously resolved continuation, and no meeting shall continue past 11 p.m.
Okay, so I think you accidentally said 7 rather than 9,
Oh.
but we know what you mean. We're reading it.
Oh,
but
sorry,
just
did
to
I say 7?
Yeah. but
Okay.
that's-
Good thing it's in writing and everybody else can read.
Yeah,
My
absolutely. I think we
apologies.
knew that would severely change our current policy.
Okay, yeah, that would
Yeah.
really change the policy.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So the policy committee, let's see if I'm going to get this right. The policy committee is making this recommendation to the board that the board recommends the changes and suggestions to policy 7.4.15
Mhm.
for acceptance.
So you're making that motion now? And then, do we have a seconder? Trustee Hawksby, thank you. So we'll open discussion on this. And 3 of you were working on this, and do you have comments at this point for your rationale? Trustee Cadence?
So when we looked at that and we discussed it, and we looked at the history of meetings within this district and other districts, and the consensus was that very rarely does a board ever go past 9:30, but there are occasions when something emergent and urgent comes upon that has to be dealt that evening, and giving that flexibility of a half an hour just entitles the board to finish that business without coming back the next night for 2 hours when you can do it in 10 and 15 minutes. And that's why we kind of did that 9:30, and I think historically on the board, and Trustee McDonald, you and I know that occasionally we've gone past for an extra 5 or 10 minutes just because something of urgent nature has to be done. And the 9:30 is the unanimous one, and I don't think that really has ever happened. So we felt that this was a way to address, sometimes late things come to the board and have to be dealt with in an urgent, fast manner, and that way you get it done. It gives trustees the opportunity to have a full debate and a full dialogue rather than feeling rushed because you've got to get done by 9 o'clock and you feel you don't have your say or you didn't quite get the information and things go by slowly. So we thought this was a really good compromise, that extra half an hour, which I think in the last 8 years since being a trustee, I think we've maybe done it 3 times. So it happens rarely, but it's good to have it there, the just in case. So that's how that that half-hour sort of came up. And then after 9:30, if we all want to hang out till 11 o'clock, that was a decision the entire board made, but I doubt that will happen on a very rare occasion. That's just my thoughts on that one.
Trustee Howe.
Yeah, I wasn't on the policy committee, but I understand what the debate would have been about and how you guys would have come to this conclusion. I think it's good for very unique times when things, very important issues are emerging. Yeah, I'm happy to get on board with it. I would just encourage us to try our best to keep us on time as much as possible in our meetings. But yeah, this looks great to me. Thanks.
Trustee Hawksby, comments on your support for this?
I think Janice covered it pretty well with our discussion in the policy committee.
Yeah. I'd like to thank you. I think this is a good option, good compromise. For anybody who didn't know, our policy did allow an extension, but any extension required unanimous consent, and so that did sometimes create friction or result in us having to call another meeting for, as Trustee Caton said, when a minor extension of time would have solved the matter, and it also sometimes created a sense of rush and urgency that didn't meet our goal of communicating well and having an opportunity to really look at things. So I feel like this is excellent. We've got a majority vote to extend for a short time, and still an option for something longer if we're all agreed that it's valid. And I think that was good. Well done. I know you looked at other districts and looked at following up on our past history. What a great idea. So that's good. If we are ready here, I think we probably are. We can I'll call the vote, and all in favor? Okay, unanimous. We are missing.
So we're
Yes?
going to do the follow-up piece to that?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
So
There's part two.
Part two. So
there's a part two.
Chairperson, since the board has passed the recommended change to policy 7.4.15, there's also an adjoining piece in the procedural bylaw of the board that talks about meeting lengths. So we will also need to look at the bylaw as a district in conjunction with this. So we would bring something forward perhaps for the November, December meeting to update the bylaw. But as I mentioned earlier, around there's some other areas in the bylaw that we may want to look at updating as well to make consistent with our practice.
Yeah, we do have some discrepancies.
I was just going to add to what Secretary Treasurer was saying, that during our discussion and our process, she brought up a number of areas in the procedure bylaw that need to be some tweaking and adjustments. So, and that is something that has to be done as a whole board, and work to do on that one there. So that we have some work to do on our board procedure bylaw to align with all our policies, and it's the work that the board does, and there's a process we will follow through Secretary Treasurer. It's not just a simple motion to deal with it. It's kind of the discussion and the bylaw process that we have to move forward on there. But yes, there are a number of changes and things that we need to address as a board in the bylaw to align it to our current practices and the way that we need to work. And some of our policies are not quite aligned with our bylaw either. So there's some work to be done on that.
You had a few places where they don't coincide, so you can pick which version you want to take as your mandate. I think it's really important though, because our once a month, requirement or moral obligation to present ourselves to the public and have these discussions is really crucial, and it's important that we look at once in a while at what we're doing, and that we make sure we are being available, we're being accountable. So it's good. Trustee Waite, you had another comment? Or you're going to?
I did. I just wanted to say the reason we didn't, and I think the Secretary Treasurer and Trustee Caton have articulated this, the reason we didn't bring that change to embed it tonight was because we wanted to do the review and bring all the changes forward collectively.
Yeah, that makes great sense.
And the other part with updating a bylaw is that typically, especially the board procedural bylaw, we should do in 2 meetings. So the first meeting should be a notice of motion, and then the changes considered and adopted at a separate meeting. So that was, you know, we would perhaps bring a recommendation and notice of motion for the November meeting, and then consider adopting changes to the bylaw for the December meeting, the board.
Could it be like a first reading and then come back?
Yes.
As an option.
Yeah.
We'll have the draft time to
Yes.
consider.
Yeah.
You are making more work for yourself. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Right, so I'll carry on
Yes,
with the
Yeah.
committee report, because
Mhm.
we had a busy meeting.
Mhm.
The next item that we discussed was our draft policy 24, equity and non-discrimination, and the engagement process. So we've now executed the engagement process with our education and community partners. The invitation will be posted on our district website for feedback, and maybe I'll ask the superintendent to speak to that. And then there have been letters are in process of being shared with our community for feedback from the draft policy.
Sure. So, thank you. We have begun the invitation process, and we compiled the list, and we'll share those lists with the trustees so we can see who is involved and if we would like to send it out to others. And those invitations are starting to be sent today. And it'll also appear, the invitation letter will appear on our website along with the draft policy and an opportunity for a feedback sheet. All feedback we will be sending to the district, and it focuses on 3 areas, and it'll be a fillable type of form so they can provide the feedback. We'll leave it active for a month, at which point all the feedback will come back to the policy committee to digest that and see if changes are required in our policy based on the feedback we receive.
Thank you. If I could have, like, this is something which some of the people potentially doing feedback may not want to identify themselves.
They
Is
don't
there
have
a
to.
format that, so,
Yeah, they don't have
so
to. There's no way of
privacy.
identifying.
Yeah.
You don't have a name or
Yeah.
group or anything.
Yeah.
It's just, it's anonymous.
Some people may not feel it's strong enough or doesn't reflect their own experiences or something. But I know also it's just the policy, or not just, it is the policy, and your administration procedures will be crucial as well. Yeah, good. Any other questions on that? Trustee Howe, you and I were the ones who weren't there,
Yeah.
so anything to say? No, thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
And the last 2 points were our administrative procedures. They're going into a deeper dive on making sure that all the policies are up to date and where they should be located. And lastly, that our childcare, we currently don't have a childcare policy, but the childcare policy will begin discussion at our next meeting on November the 9th.
Super. On the AP, so that's something too that's coming into our equity scan, is it?
They will review all.
And the anti-racism
They review
piece.
every document we
Yeah.
have in the district.
How interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll be good.
Lots of work on this. Yes.
And if there's no further questions, I'd like to move that the Board of Education receive the policy committee board report as presented.
Okay, second, Trustee Caton, all in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much for that work, committee. It's considerable progress on many things. All right, so our next item is the Facilities Committee report. And Trustee Howe, you're the chair.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, we had our Facilities Committee meeting on October 19th. And there was lots to talk about at that meeting also. One of the first things that we went over was, there was actually quite a few things, but Brenda had mentioned earlier in the meeting the LRFP option A discussions. So I don't know if anybody wants to go over that again, or if you feel like, I mean, it was sort of stated that we were gonna go into a committee of the whole meeting to go further into some discussions on these issues because we need a little bit more time. I don't know if anybody else wanted to have a little bit of a chat about that at this time, or if I can go ahead and just make the motion that the Board of Education receive the long-range facilities plan option A solutions briefing note as provided. And then that will lead into the notice of motion will be going, our next long-range facilities discussions will be a committee of the whole meeting for our facilities committee in November. And then there'll be a motion for a decision on those solutions at the November board meeting.
Essentially, we'll be getting recommendation and motion.
That's correct.
Yeah, that makes sense. We need a
motion.
yeah, seconder for receiving that, the briefing report and good summary. Any questions about that? No? All in favor? Thank you for that. I noticed on the report of this meeting that it shows committee members, Sarah Jane Howe Chair, Christine Masak, Trustee, and myself, and I'm not actually a committee member, but I attended because the other trustees, and I don't believe Christy was present. So yeah, the regrets piece and is correct, but I think maybe that list of committee members or member board present or something.
Thanks for putting that.
It was a little confusing to have her in two places.
We can,
Because we like her so much.
Yes, indeed, and it was another interesting opportunity to be at one of the committees that as the chair, I'm not normally doing that, so that was quite interesting. And what else do you have to share with us from that?
The second piece was the administrative consolidation feasibility study, which I think, Brenda, were you wanting to say anything else about that? Yeah.
so, just to advise trustees that we have commissioned a request for proposals around a feasibility study around our administrative functions in the district and the pros and cons of consolidating and the options around how to address some of our capacity issues. Currently, the district administration is fairly dispersed throughout the district, and that was a reflection of the downsizing, the available space that was experienced previously in the district, but now with the enrollment pressures we talked about earlier this evening, we're finding that we're needing to reclaim some of that space for classrooms, and then what is our options around those current functions. For example, Airport Elementary has 5 classrooms that are occupied with our inclusive education department because there's no room in this facility for that administrative function, so what would be our options around that? So just to let trustees know that we've put a request for proposals out on BC Bid, and we're looking for somebody to have a comprehensive review of the district, our enrollment pressures, our options around administrative functions, and how we would try and address it for the future of the district.
Questions?
Great, thank you.
We needed a motion to
Yeah, I
accept
can
that?
go ahead and make that motion that the Board of Education receive the school board office feasibility study briefing notice provided.
Second, Trustee Waite, thank you. All in favor? Great, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for, you're busy.
And then the next thing was Ian had let us know about some Highland secondary improvements. So I don't know if you want to speak to that, Ian?
I can. We're just beginning a process with an architect to look at some potential changes inside a Highland Secondary. And particular focus would be some of the older pods where you have to transition through a classroom to another space, and that directly affects areas like the foods room and many of those spaces have not been touched for a long time. So we're just beginning a process to look at how we might address some of those shortcomings.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, I think it'll be nice for that school to have a little bit of a shine.
Just a note that I don't know if all of our newer trustees know that Highland did have a seismic upgrade. So it is not one of the schools that, like Vanier or Lake Trail, that has been on our list for a while and haven't. So it is a school where any of the risk factors have been dealt with quite a few years ago. Isn't that correct? Yeah. So it'll make it, it's in good shape from that perspective, but it'll update it from a learning perspective. Good. Yeah. Sorry.
That is correct. They did receive a seismic upgrade in the 2000s, and it has made it very seismically sound. There just weren't a lot of the cosmetic and other changes that we managed to do at places like Vanier and Lake Trail during that process. But the school it's very well looked after.
Yeah, and the last item was just a little good news piece. The Hornby Island and Lake Trail Community Schools grand openings, which I actually was lucky enough to be able to attend both of those. The Hornby School, we actually got to take a boat over to the island, which I'd never been on a boat like that, so that was really exciting. And it was just nice to be back in a school with the kids and like seeing everyone, and we were welcomed. And the Hornby Island School specifically was neat for me to see because I didn't have any experience with that school beforehand, and seeing how local that project was really emotional, and it really showed in some of the speeches that were made, and the teaching staff over there and the whole community really, and there was a real array of dignitaries. It was awesome. And then Lake Trail, which I enjoyed as well. I got to have a little tour of that before the grand opening, so it was really neat to be in there to see all of the art and all of the links to the community members around there. And yeah, it was just that was a really exciting morning as well. So that was great. And yeah, I don't know if anybody else got to go to both, but it was very exciting.
Okay.
Brenda.
So I just wanted to acknowledge Heidi Bell for all of the work she did in organizing both of the events, and just wanted to say a huge thank you for the work you did in helping make those a success. So much appreciated.
Thanks.
Absolutely. That's very good. Trustee Caden, did you have a comment?
So I just have a question regarding the Facilities Committee and Lake Trail, and it's just through you, Madam Chair, through the Secretary Treasurer, Director Hesselgray, that it's just regarding a comment or a concern regarding Lake Trail decommission, and some of the concerns were brought up, I believe, in the paper by a certain individual, and what's happening, how do we decommission the school, and why we didn't repurpose some of the stuff, whatever it is. I'm wondering if through you, Director Hesselgray, can explain why things were done and how they were done, just so we have a clear understanding of the process. That would be acceptable.
Oh, absolutely.
Certainly.
Yes, that was.
Sure, I'm happy to take that on. Do you want me to answer that, Secretary Treasurer?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, so it was a very reasonable question was posed that asked why did we not essentially proceed with the deconstruction rather than a demolition of Lake Trail. And I think there's a couple of pieces to it, because it's really we're in a middle ground between the two, and it really came as the original gymnasium in that school from the 1950s had a hardwood floor, and really questions around why wasn't that hardwood floor pulled out in some other material. Part of our process in the demolition has been doing a very significant hazardous material removal. The building is from the 50s. There's lots of nasties in there, such as asbestos and lead paint and silica dust and all those sorts of things. And so we've had to go through about a 4-month hazardous material abatement. And then once the demolition follows that, it's a really expensive undertaking. And unfortunately, the ministry funds us to a level that just allows us to do a standard hazardous material removal and demolition, because the deconstruction takes much longer. But what we did was there's kind of 3 steps we took to ensure that we didn't really have material go to waste. We did a significant 2-week salvage where we really gathered all trades in the school just before the hazardous material removal began and school was out. We spent 2 weeks pulling out everything from doors to door handles and PA systems and all the bits and bobs that we know we can use in other schools. So we got that done. And then we, I directed the contractor to remove a certain amount of the fir floor joists from the 2nd floor so we could repurpose that into the school, into future schools for projects. It'd be great for our woodworking students to use that material as well. And then we also, the third thing, which I think is really important, is we entered into a partnership with UBC Faculty of Engineering, and particularly in the Civil Engineering Department, where they do all of the seismic testing for British Columbia. And it's one of the best facilities in the world for that. And we have 2 12 by 12 sections coming out of Lake Trail. One is a wall section and another is a roof section. So they're going to take this 1950s construction and they're going to test it and see how it actually performs under different seismic conditions. So what we feel is that we're really, using this school as a means to inform how other schools across the province will perform in terms of an earthquake, and it will really help the engineering world modify practices in future construction. So I think we've done some really good things with Lake Trail School as it moves on.
Thanks, Ian.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much. Trustee Waite.
Yeah, I want to thank Trustee Caton for raising that issue. I think it was really important for the community to understand what we did with as best as we could to the materials in the school, and I guess this is an opportunity to shine on all of that work that was done in trying to repurpose and even use for science some of the pieces of the school. And so I just wanted to thank everybody that was involved in trying to save everything that could be saved.
I'd actually asked Director Hesselgrave before that process, probably 6 months or more, about that, whether deconstruction was possible, and because you can imagine my feelings about things going to landfill. It was very sad, but he explained the plan and the consideration it given to us. So I think we can be confident that those considerations and our waste stream are in the minds of the planning that's done, and absolutely every effort is made. But there is a place where it's just not realistic, and where the goal of reuse of those old houses that Nickel Brothers is doing, or deconstruction of houses, is great, but especially on a large scale like that, it's still, society's not quite ready to do it. And I appreciate all the effort that our district does make, and how mindful Ian and the operations department are in doing that. It was very difficult to see that. We know that, but it's still a reality, and every effort made where feasible. So yeah, good questions. Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to follow up about the 2 school openings and see how different they were, with an elementary school on Hornby Island and our middle school at Lake Trail. And one of the highlights for me was having the tours by the students giving us the tours, and seeing the school through their eyes and their excitement about it, and things like having blackboards on the walls, some of the walls on the Hornby Elementary School, so the kids, they come to school in the morning and they draw and do chalk things, and that they can do outdoor learning outside, and the kinds of things that were done at the Hornby Elementary in terms of the heating systems that can keep them warm even if the power goes out first thing in the morning, and the work that went into the creation of the Lake Trail vision of education, and the kinds of the planning that took place, and the work by the teachers and all the staff and senior leadership in transitioning it to something different than it was, and that great, is it the Great Hall or the Great Staircase, where students come and hang out in the morning and listening to drumming, and listening to some of that through the student that gave me the tour, you can tell that it's making a difference. And I just wanted to commend everybody for all of that work when maybe you felt it never was going to end, and all those change orders and all those things that happened, and having to, you know, do builds on islands, and it was, yeah, well done.
It was very amazingly managed in that doing that work in the COVID conditions, doing it on the 2 islands away, and there are other projects, other significant projects going on at the island as well. And once COVID opened up, the visitor traffic was intense, and being able to get crews on and off, being able to get the work done was enormous. So I also really commend the staff at both schools for all of the work they did to move things and unpack and get ready for the schools to be in learning mode by September 7th. That was, and of course your operations people involved in that too, really huge. But I felt that the star of it was our superintendent, and his capacity to get the kids on Hornby going is really your forte there. It shows.
Great.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun, and I know I was so sorry, Trustee Kate, that you couldn't be at the Lake Trail opening, because I know that school and the Courtney area really was in your heart, but too many obligations at once, I think. But it was really well done, really well done. Yeah, highlights. Those are the things that make the rest of it, all those finances and everything, all that worthwhile. All the counting, the screws and the bolts and whatever. So, do we have to have a motion to accept?
To make one more motion.
Oh, yes.
Just that that the Board of Education receives the Facilities Committee Board Report as presented.
Second, Trustee Hawksby. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you so much. That was more fun than a Facilities Committee report usually is. Really?
No, it's true. And with any luck, Director Hesselgrave and myself, along with the rest of the senior team, continue to advocate for more schools with the Capital Branch, and we're hopeful that we'll have more grand openings coming soon to a neighborhood near you.
Yeah. I hope you've got more ribbons in your office there. All right, so our board business items here, the Vista Fall Meeting. Trustee Kate, you've given us a report, and I know you're the chair of Vista, and that it was a very interesting meeting. Do you want to comment on any of your?
Well, yeah, thank you, Chair. So as the president of the Vancouver School Trustee Association, I had the privilege to organizing a meeting, and I'll just highlight a couple of things. Is we had BCS Director Dr. John Chenoweth spoke to attendees, and Truth and Reconciliation, and with the past few months of the unmarked graves and the reports from SD 57, education is going to be a big part of the process of Truth and Reconciliation over the next couple of years. And he spoke to us, and one of the things he talked about is that, and it was quite interesting, and being on the policy committee and being a policy person myself, I didn't realize that that often provincial and school district policies conflict with the teachings of Indigenous ways of learning and family community. And that was something when he talked about some examples, it was kind of eye-opening, and it was like, and I know that Trustee, you also listened to him too, so he brought that process in there, and it was just, as you move forward, is to ensuring maybe have an Indigenous elder or someone with you as you develop these policies and on that one there, depending on what they are. I mean, there's certain policies that you are different on that one there. So that was something as you move forward with Truth and Reconciliation, and that as school districts to be aware of. And we talked about, addressing the systemic racism is a problem within the whole educational system, and we are all part of the system, and we need to continue to work together to listen, understand, and learn from points made in that report. And Sarah, do you want to have anything to add to his comments. I know that you were quite impressed with his speaking.
Yeah, I mean, I always enjoy hearing him. This was my second time, and I've read some things from him as well. And it really, not to skip ahead at all, but on our agenda, but it did really tie into the experience that I had. I got to spend some time with Michelle at the Campagnola dinner, and some of the things that were being talked about by the speaker that we got to hear there really tied into what he had said about just some of their laws, I guess, like their internal laws and community beliefs, just how they align with so many things that we think, and then how they don't in so many ways as well. And just the way he explained it to me, it just seemed that I could really understand what was happening. You know, it was easy for me to receive, which I appreciated a lot.
And one of the examples he gave to the Island trustees is that some school districts, well, most school districts or some, invite elders into their schools to work with their students, but they don't invite them to the staff room to have a cup of tea. They don't invite them, include them in part of that. And just little things like that, when you think about it, it makes an impact. And it talks about that one there. So as we move forward, it's just understanding that when you have an elder coming into the school, is sitting down and having a conversation. They go out and they speak to the students. And what policies do we have that allow that? And some districts are more constricted than others. And he was giving some examples. So as we move forward through Truth and Reconciliation, all school districts will be having those conversations and those topics, and how we rebuild through education and through understanding and learning. So it was really good. And the second part of our presentation is we had Dr. Allison and Dr. Waters gave a COVID update, including the pandemic effects on kids. And they talked about the infections in children, and 9 in 10 children have experienced disruption of their schooling. Children's behaviors have changed, and all that one there. And it talked about the vaccine hesitancy and vaccine on that one there. So it was a really great understanding as you move forward to the next phase of having those conversations, as the board chair talked about, is the vaccine mandates and the vaccine process. It's just getting all the information. So it was a really good information process. And I did share the slide with Deepak because it talked about students in the school, so they've got the, I guess, the true facts on that. So it was a really good meeting. And because our superintendent said to me one afternoon that he and another couple of superintendents want to know when the next VISTA meeting was, because you had a surprise for us. He volunteered our district for hosting the next meeting. So in March, if we can meet in person, our branch will meet here, and we look forward to finding out what our superintendent surprises for us. So I'm waiting with anticipation there, Mr. DeVeo, what you have.
I won't say a word.
I hope that we're allowed to dance by then. That would be great. You could have your band up there.
So I'm not sure if anybody else attended the meeting, but like I said, it was great, and it was nice to see all the trustees. And what I did is I wanted to hear one positive thing from every single district. And as what you highlight tonight was with the school openings, despite all the challenges, despite COVID, despite whatever it is, there has been positives happening in every single school district across the island, and that goes to the great work of all our senior staff, our superintendents, and our teachers, and our community, to making sure that our students are in school and having a really good experience. So it's nice to hear the great things happening within our educational system, because quite often we hear the negative. It's nice to hear the positive for a change, and there's lots of great things happening across the island, and great things happening in our district too.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. And Trustee Wade, I think you were a part of it as well. Were you?
I was,
Did you
yeah.
attend? So,
I
yeah.
really enjoyed my time at the VISTA meeting.
yeah, I've
Always learn a lot.
I was at a meeting in my role as our rep on Tribune Bay Outdoor Center Society, so missed it, but I knew that it would be having an interesting program. And so BCSDA provincial meeting, you also were our rep to that, and it
So
just
I
occurred recently.
I would love to give you a written report, but it was Saturday afternoon, and I know
Yeah.
that Heidi's so efficient, she needed to have that meeting, and I could not do the Saturday morning meeting and the Wednesday with the minutes because it would happen. It was actually quite a really interesting session. Our president did talk about that, and she did mention the guidelines that came out Friday afternoon, the roles of boards of education, and that we are, as a board, are the employer. Therefore, we are responsible for districts, not government. They don't employ teachers. We employ the teachers. So that was something she wanted to make sure that all trustees understood, that we, the board, are the employer, and we move forward as that. There was talk about conflict of interest. How does that impact on that? It was evident that the issue of the pandemic, masks and vaccinations vary greatly across the province. And you all listen to the news and watch the news, and you all understand it's quite interesting. And words on that. In the end, there was 4 motions. The first motion came regarding about teaching, and that passed unanimously. But the 2 motions I'm most proud of is myself and Trustee Howe here brought 2 motions to Provincial Council. Hers was regarding declaring that the opioid crisis, and also talk about mental health and addictions. That was passed unanimously, and we were thanked for bringing that forward. And today I was really excited, although she tempered my excitement a bit, when the federal government introduced a new Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions. So they have a new mental health and addictions on the federal level, and our motion is going there, so hopefully we'll get some traction on that. And the second one, I'm sure our Secretary Treasurer and our Director Isel Hesselgrave will be quite happy with, regarding money for annual facilities grant and upkeep, and that also passed unanimously, and all school districts felt that was really important, and we're not being funded enough, so that was another one. And the motion that created the most debate and did not pass, I don't have the exact wordings, was a motion brought forward regarding COVID notifications and COVID announcements and COVID, and it became apparent that not all health districts and all school districts are the same, and we operate differently, and that was quite evident. So I can see that the next year is going to be very challenging for the public education system as we move forward on trying the best to get a consensus on everything, because it's not there, and we all read the news and we all know that. But I will have those motions as part of my official minutes. I will send them off to Heidi when I get them. I just don't have them yet. Heidi from Trails hasn't sent them to me, so I will send them off to you. So it was a good meeting, and I look forward to our next meeting in December. We have Academy, where we have information on truth and reconciliation, and a pre-conference, and get to hang out with some trustees and get some good governance work for a couple of days. And that's my report.
Yeah, any questions, comments from you? Yes, Trustee Howe.
I just want to say thanks so much for bringing those motions. And, upon reflection of any of that kind of work, I think my takeaway, this was like my first time doing anything like this at the board table. And it was really, I just appreciate you guys helping me out with it. And it was really nice that we could all come together on something that was really important. And collaborate on it and make things happen. And it was nice to hear that it was unanimously passed.
And apparently not very
That's exciting
often.
to me, so
And not very often all motions unanimously passed. So
Yeah.
it was kind of nice that they were all very well supported and very well received. And we were thanked for bringing it forward, because sometimes the subject of opioid and mental health and drug addiction is something that it's not spoken about. It's one of those things that we don't want to talk about. It's very uncomfortable. And that's one of the reasons why we have the crisis that we have, because we're not comfortable talking about the impact of drugs and mental health has on all of us, because mental health and drug addiction does not discriminate. It does not care where you live. It does not care whether you live on the streets or in the most expensive house in the community. It does not care what your education is. It impacts all of us. And driving down the road the other day, when I saw 2 young men lying on the road with ambulance, whatever, it really hit me. This is in my backyard. This is in my community. And it starts by education and by talking about it and having these conversations at the table. through education. And I thank the board for allowing me to bring that to provincial council and opening the doors to a very sensitive subject that most people do not want to talk about.
Well, your experience there, you know, your experience with BCSDA and how to bring it forward was really helpful in doing that. And, but, you know, it was interesting because when you started this and the conversations, the municipalities were passing these motions because of the Mums Stop the Harm campaign. And Mums Stop the Harm had not thought of school districts as bodies that would make a public statement or try or take this concern. So I think this was pretty groundbreaking for you and for us as a whole to be putting it on the table and in a very good way. And also, just we know that the facilities grant issue was that our Secretary Treasurer and our Finance Chair, well, all of us had input into it, made a presentation to the provincial budget committee, and I understand that it went very well. It was also, I think we assume that everybody is going to be making that pitch, but actually it was very useful to have our district included in the priorities on behalf of the schools, public sector as a whole. So well done on that. We've gotten a lot of things done, and it's collaborative, very successful. If you want no more questions on that, we've got our Indigenous Education Council item here, and I'm not sure, are you going to report to us on that, Trustee Hawksby? It appeared on the agenda, and I'm not quite sure what.
Tomorrow night is the annual general meeting for Indigenous Education.
Yeah.
I know they are looking for more parent representatives to sit at the table. They've updated the website for Indigenous Education. It's more interactive, and you can see the elders that are in your schools, and you get to meet the ISWs and have that picture to know who your child is talking about, and maybe bring it up on the computer for families to engage in more conversation with their kids. And
yeah, that's great. So it's a Zoom meeting, and definitely encourage Indigenous families to participate and find out what's going on. Yes.
I also had the pleasure of attending that meeting with Kat, which was exciting. I know that website is sort of a soft launch. There's still some information to be inputted into it, but at this stage, before it's completely promoted, I would encourage trustees to check it out. I went down a real rabbit hole because it's just so user-friendly and so easy to use, and there's so much information, and it's just such a great, I didn't know that was coming, so I was really pleased to see it, and yeah, it was a really great meeting, so thanks so much for having me.
That's great. Good. Campanella lecture, Trustee Wade.
Yeah. So, you know, the timing was interesting. Our board chair had to try to be in two places at once, and chose to go to Vancouver to attend meetings with the superintendent and all of the other representatives of the districts.
On the
And
policy
so
for
then I had this amazing
reserves.
opportunity provided to me, which I also extended to Trustee Howe. And we attended the Community Justice dinner and the lecture series, and it was the 10th lecture series. It was amazing. The dinner honored the lecturer Terry Lynn Williams-Davidson, as well as some of the milestone markers for the volunteers. It was a really lovely event, and then the lecture, it was amazing. It was an artist talk by Terry Lynn Williams-Davidson, and the theme of it was, or the exhibit is called The Supernatural Realm, Female Supernatural Beings of Haida Gwaii. And the lecturer is a lawyer. She's general counsel for the Haida Nation, and wove so much information into her lecture that it was just wonderful. And They do record the lectures and they do post them on their website. So I'd encourage everyone, when you have time, to listen, to turn on a lecture, to listen to that lecture and previous lectures. And the questions that came from the audience as well were like she said, we were a tough crowd. It's a hard topic. It's a tough topic, but the lecture was amazing in how she answered, her respect for other nations, her information on the Haida Nation and what they've done in terms of their land and their governance model was amazing. And so I want to thank the board chair for doing something else so that I could attend.
I was watching it alone
and
in
I
my
learned
room
I learned a lot
remotely.
about one of our community partners, the Community Justice Center, and I didn't know a
that's
lot about
excellent.
them in the past. And our board chair is also the current president of the Community Justice Center, and it's an amazing organization. And so I just wanted to share how great it was. If you have opportunity to do work or participate with this organization, please consider it.
There was also a concert on Saturday night, which I attended, and again, quite an amazing blend of the music and the artwork, and her husband, Robert Davidson, the carver, and drum player. And there was her display at the art gallery is on, so I really encourage people to go to that. And they also filmed the art gallery opening event, which was very limited participation, but I believe that also is going to be available for viewing online on a number of websites. And so the whole week of this cultural sharing and really interesting information, it'll be available, and the art gallery has the exhibit going on still. So
And
the
I was-
Capital Lectures series has been quite, the previous one was Dr. Murray Sinclair, and that talk is also available. Yeah.
And I'm remiss to not mention that our district is partners
Yes.
in the lecture series.
Yeah.
And the caliber of knowledge that's shared, I really appreciate our district being a partner in that.
Next one, which will probably be in the spring, is Dr. Cindy Blackstock. And most of us, know that her role in fighting for the rights of Indigenous children and equity in education funding for them has been absolutely enormous. So I'm looking forward to hearing what she has to say as well. I'm glad you guys went. Go. Yeah. Board correspondence, we didn't have any at this point. Public question period, do we have any questions have come in? No, well, we had many answers this evening, so that's good. And more questions to come. We are in good time. We will not require an extension of this meeting. Are there any other comments or questions from my colleagues here?
I did just notice that we didn't say when the next meeting is, and it's November 24th.
Thank you. Yeah. It's
Or 23rd, my apologies. Put that on the record.
the other 24. I just rely on all the notifications that come through to us in such good order. And if that is it for now, then I would accept a motion to adjourn. Thank you.